Hello and welcome back to another video on high altitude investing. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about why I think Bitcoin is doing another 2008, very similar to what the NASDAQ composite did between 2008 and 2009 as it corrected from its peak to its lows. The reason I think this is a very, very important comparison because it gives you perspective as to why tons of people are going to be very bearish, just like they were in 2008 when they thought the world was going to end and that we would never recover from the financial crisis. With that being said, we completely recovered inside of the NASDAQ and proceeded to break new all-time highs. And I think that may be what is coming in Bitcoin. So I'm going to be going over that today. Make sure that you guys hit the like button for me as well as the subscribe button because I am almost at 26,000 subscribers and I have a personal goal of reaching 100,000. I also make 5 videos a week, so you're going to want to make sure that you're subscribed anyways so that you can get that content on the regular. So without further ado, let's get straight into my Bitcoin analysis. So Bitcoin is on the bottom here and the NASDAQ is actually on the top. And you can tell because the NASDAQ has those little bit of gapping in the candlesticks because they actually have hours that the stock market is open and hours that it's closed. Whereas Bitcoin and crypto is a 24-hour freaking market, which is what makes it so cool. And Bitcoin on the bottom here, you can see that Bitcoin went very, very capitulatory from 10K to 4K, meaning that a lot of people panic sold very quickly. In fact, from the blue box down, I believe that we fell about 40%, actually even a little more, 56%. Now let's see what happens here on the NASDAQ. Look at that, that's about 48% as well from the blue box. So we're getting a very similar percentage drop when people start panic. And then in the NASDAQ, you can see that we made kind of like a falling wedge pattern here and broke out of that wedge. Now that wedge didn't test the wedge as many times as some wedges do, but that kind of squeezed range with a breakout. And look at Bitcoin, we have that same squeezed range and a breakout upside, and then everybody's in complete disbelief. They think it's going to keep dumping. I see a lot of people drawing a rising wedge right here and showing that Bitcoin's just going to see downward continuation. And, you know, there's patterns here for sure, but let's talk about why I don't think it's a rising wedge. Well, first of all, this was actually, everybody probably would have thought this was a rising wedge as well. In fact, I guarantee that they would have thought this was a big rising wedge. And of course, the NASDAQ broke out of this and continued to rally. And like I said, actually, after this area here, I don't have it visually here, but it actually went up to new all-time highs. So we created a very large uptrend out of this. And I think that that same kind of trick is happening right here in Bitcoin. Everybody says, oh, this is a rising wedge. We are going to go into a very, very large correction. Bitcoin's downtrend is not yet over. And that's kind of the narrative that I'm seeing that most people have, when personally I think this is actually a great time to buy, especially if we get a little bit of a dip, because you never want to FOMO in on green candlesticks. But if we do dip similar to we did in this orange box up here on the NASDAQ, and we test 80 or 6,800 on the short term, my golly, that will be a really, really good spot to be buying in on Bitcoin. And so that's kind of the comparison that I'm looking at in the 6-hour time frames with Bitcoin. And I'm getting that from data in other markets because I've seen this pattern occur before. With that being said, the stock market is jumping up as well. I see a lot of people drawing this as an ABC correction. A lot of people even think that the C wave is completed and that we're just going to dump extremely quickly here. And for that, I think that people are getting a little bit too quick to jump the gun. This actually did break out of a wedge pattern. That's a valid wedge because of the amount of points are in this wedge. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's a valid falling wedge pattern. And we've already made the target for that pattern, but this, to me, when you get a huge falling wedge like that, that usually means that sellers are getting squeezed because what happens is you have a very large body of sellers come in right here, then a pretty big amount of buyers come in, and then another large amount of sellers come in, and then a bigger amount of buyers come in, then a smaller amount of sellers come in, a similar amount of buyers come in, smaller and smaller amount of sellers. So there's less selling occurring each time that there's a down leg, because the amount of selling pressure that's there gets completely released. So the selling pressure is completely released at the bottom, and it turns into a buying market, and we go into a bullish move. And so that's kind of what I'm watching in the S&P. These big time frames are, for me, really telling a picture of continuation, which is interesting because, you know, one of the things that helps me understand that I definitely could be right about the stock market seeing continuation is just how many people think that this right here is going to create a Great Depression down to this price down here. There's literally hundreds of charts on TradingView. In fact, I went and counted the other day, and there was 3 or 4 bullish charts, and I counted over 30 charts that were calling either a 2008 to major support at 14 or a Great Depression at 400. So the sentiment is really bearish right now. And, you know, look at this trend. I mean, for this being the first sell-off, this isn't very much of a leg up for the entire thing to be done with the entire bullish trend. You know, this just reminds me of Bitcoin, when Bitcoin went from 7K to 5K and then did its final parabolic leg when everybody was not expecting it and everybody tried to call the top early on Bitcoin at 7K. Or just like when everybody tried to call the top, it even looks, I've explained this before in another video, but it even looks exactly like Ethereum did at that same price point, which leads me to believe that we have more upside coming in these markets. Let's go ahead and drop timeframes, and I'll show you what I mean. So if you look right here, this is what I'm talking about. This is what the stock market looks like to me. We have this move up. We have a parabolic move up, and then we get the first sell-off right here, and then we break out, and then we get this huge panic wick that everybody thinks is the end of the world, and then we finish the final leg up inside of the market. And, you know, this right here is the first dip. This is the second dip. Here's that impulse up. Here's the panic, and then here's that final leg, and then the bear market starts. And so if we just take that same kind of thing and go back to the S&P, I think it's really, really important to note that we could be playing pretty much the same pattern out on the S&P in this big time frame here. And let me show you. So this right here, you start your uptrend. This is early accumulation, just like Ethereum. Here's your first sell-off. Here's that second panic. Here's that leg up. Here's the shakeout. And then you need that final wave on the upside. And that's just my personal conjecture on the S&P, but I'm very confident in this analysis so long as our horizontal support holds at 2100, because that's major horizontal support. And that's the same exact point inside of the fractal that Ethereum held support and went up in value quite significantly. So that's kind of what I'm watching, you guys, with the S&P. By the way, if you even go up into the 2-month candlesticks, if these 2-month candlesticks close, you know, when they do close, it will be May. So if next month we've closed up here, it will also look like Ethereum did in that panic, because we closed with a very, very big bullish wick. So you guys, I'm bullish on Bitcoin, and I'm bullish on the S&P 500, the stock market. I'm bullish on other cryptos like the altcoins, like Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin Cash reminds me a lot of 2015 Bitcoin, the first capitulation, second capitulation, and where the uptrend starts. So that's kind of my analysis, you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure that you hit that like button for me, as well as subscribing. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the future updates that I make. As always, stay profitable out there.